Every year, a new crop of fresh young talent gets drafted into the NBA, and these new additions offer teams at the bottom of the standings a bright, hopeful outlook for their future. The first players taken are obviously the ones pegged by the experts to have the most potential to be the best players in that draft down the line, so of course they are also the ones that come with the highest expectations when it comes time to perform on the court. It may not be fair to these players taken so early on, but it's natural for them to be compared to those drafted around them, and it can seem like a player is a disappointment if he's getting outplayed by others drafted behind him. This leads us to the topic of today's video, where we'll be discussing Marvin Bagley of the Sacramento Kings, and how his situation with the team has all of a sudden come crashing down on him. Things are so bad that after being taken second overall in the 2018 draft, he's not even getting playing time for them anymore. So in this video, we'll discuss everything that led up to this point, whether or not he's being treated fairly, and what should happen moving forward. Before we start though, it turns out about 49% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. So, as you can probably tell from the topic at hand, Marvin Bagley hasn't exactly had an easy go of it in the pros to this point. In college, he was one of the biggest names going. He was the #1 recruit coming out of high school, and he had been on the radar of NBA teams for years before even getting drafted. So for things to end up where they are now is kind of wild in the grand scheme of things. He played 1 year of college basketball at Duke, a powerhouse year in and year out, and he had one of the most productive freshman seasons a big man has had in recent memory, averaging about 21 points and 11 rebounds per game that season, while shooting a scorching hot 61% from the field. Clearly, with all of the hype surrounding his name entering the season, to then be followed up with a tremendously productive year, he continued to be viewed as one of the best NBA prospects that season. He declared for the draft after just 1 season at Duke, and while most were high on him, the debate over how high people should be on him raged on. While Bagley's production looked the most impressive on paper, we all know that there's more that goes into scouting talent than just purely numbers. DeAndre Ayton was another big man emerging at University of Arizona that season, whose brute strength, athleticism, and impressive face-up game was intriguing to teams, and overseas, a young Luka Doncic was breaking all sorts of records in Europe. Each of them brought different skill sets, and what made Bagley so intriguing was his guard-like skills for a near 7-footer. He had a pretty good post-game in college, he's mobile and quick as a roll man, and he showed good motor on the glass as well, and in some of his scouting reports before the draft, he was compared to guys like Amari Stoudemire and Chris Bosh. The issue, though, was with him defensively, where he was kind of a mess. He has the physical tools to excel on that end, but when it comes to having the instincts and IQ needed to succeed on that end of the floor, he struggled quite a bit. Because of that, he was viewed still as a top 3 prospect that season, but most of the debate over who should go #1 was between Ayton and Luka Doncic. So, when draft night came around, DeAndre Ayton ended up going #1, but the Sacramento Kings, who had the second pick, surprised a lot of people when they passed on taking Luka Doncic in favor of Bagley. This immediately set Bagley up for unfair comparisons throughout his career, because as you all know, Luka has become a legitimate superstar already, and Bagley is, well, currently the opposite of that. Sacramento hasn't exactly had the greatest track record with top picks in recent memory, with De'Aaron Fox being one of the few to blossom for them, and their history of mismanagement and bottom feeding in the standings wasn't exactly the greatest environment to come into. Then, when you consider the fact that the Kings fired coach Dave Yorger at the end of Bagley's rookie season, only to hire Luke Walton, who has definitely been a subpar coach in the NBA that has been on the hot seat for a while now, it's even more to consider to this whole Bagley debacle. Plus, almost every year Bagley has struggled through injuries, holding him back even further from potentially reaching his potential. Now, all excuses aside, Bagley really hasn't been that bad on the court for the Kings through his 3 seasons when he's been healthy. His production has been pretty identical every year, putting up about 14 points and 7.5 rebounds per game. He shoots about 50% from the field, and he has steadily improved his 3-point shooting as well, although there is still a lot more room for improvement there. The problem, though, has been, you guessed it, the defensive side of the ball for him. The Kings have been, as a team, one of the worst defensive units in the league for a while, which culminated in them literally having the worst defensive rating in league history last season, and Bagley definitely wasn't helping much there. Not only can you visibly see him getting lost defensively throughout games, but so many defensive metrics back up what your eyes are telling you when you watch. According to Synergy Sports, Marvin Bagley ranked as one of the worst defenders in several different categories that I will now go through. In terms of total points allowed per possession on defense, Marvin Bagley ranked in the 7th percentile, meaning he was in the bottom 7% of NBA players regarding how many points they allow their matchups to score per possession. Getting into more specifics, pick-and-roll possessions were the plays that he had to defend the most often throughout games, and in pick-and-roll actions, he ranked in the 19th percentile on defense, still very near the bottom. When defending isolation plays, Bagley ranked in the 2nd percentile. Yes, that's right, he was in the bottom 2% of isolation defenders. When defending post-ups, he ranked in the 11th percentile, and by now, surely you get the idea, he just isn't a very good defender. So, with all of that being said, after being drafted 2nd overall in a loaded draft class, his career has been filled with injuries constantly keeping him in and out of the lineup, and defensive woes have made it tough for his coaches to trust him on a consistent basis. The Kings exercised Bagley's 4th-year option in his contract at the beginning of the season, choosing to bring him back for that 4th year, which they didn't have to do. So when they did that, you at the very least figured they would plan to give him one last chance to prove himself this season, before he becomes a free agent. But on the very last day of their offseason, before the regular season began, they broke some news that took everybody by surprise. They made it clear that Marvin Bagley will not be a part of the team's rotation this season. In the offseason, the team signed Tristan Thompson to take the backup center minutes, they extended Richaun Holmes to be the starting big man again, Harrison Barnes has been the starting power forward that with that spot locked up, and ultimately, because of the fact that they needed defensively help, they chose Mo Harkless to be the team's backup power forward over him, leaving Marvin Bagley without a spot. It officially means the team has given up on him. They're accepting the fact that they whiffed on the number 2 pick, and if Bagley wants to get his career back on track, he will need to do so elsewhere. We've heard trade rumors surrounding Bagley's name for a while now, and he's been pretty clearly unhappy in Sacramento for a while too, but for some reason, no trade ever came this offseason. The Kings played their season opener last night, and Luke Walton did stay true to his word as Bagley played 0 minutes, so you should definitely expect to see Bagley traded soon. The craziest part of this whole situation is that Bagley's production isn't even that bad, and unlike most players that fall into the category of being a bust, he has shown plenty of flashes of talent that can translate offensively, but the fear is that he's becoming the next Jahlil Okafor, and the struggles defensively will always overshadow that. I don't think it's time to give up on him by any means, but clearly the Kings have, so now we just have to sit and wait until another team goes out and acquires him to try to revitalize his career and give him a second chance. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below which team you think should give Bagley a chance. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.